Hello, welcome to a special interview for Cotton. And today our guest is Anjali Bharadwaj. She is the national convener for National Campaign for People's Right to Information. And she was very, very closely, actively involved in the Right to Information movement and Right to Information Act in the processing in the enacting of Right to Information Act. So today we are going to discuss with you about the new act. This is Digital Personal Data Protection Act. Now, first I welcome you to this interview and I would like to know what are the basic features of this new act, Digital Personal Data Protection Act.
Yes. So thank you for having me here with you today. And the Digital Personal Data Protection Act that has been brought is really a very, very concerning piece of legislation. And I think it's very important that as citizens, we understand and we recognize the challenges that this law is going to bring to us and to our democracy. The data protection law was brought in ostensibly to protect our data, to say that there are so many companies in this age of social media data gathering who are collecting our data, and then we get unsolicited phone calls. There is financial fraud, all sorts of problems that are happening when that data gets sold or it gets leaked. So the idea was that there should be a strong data protection law which should protect people's privacy. And however, any law of data protection must also protect people's right to information. Because, like the Supreme Court of India has upheld, both the right to information and the right to privacy are fundamental rights of citizens. Now, if one looks at the data protection law that was passed, it neither protects the right to privacy nor does it protect the right to information. So I will just talk very briefly first about how it destroys the right to information framework, which has been so vibrantly used in our country. So in the Right to Information Act that was passed in 2005, already there was a balancing of the right to privacy and the right to information, because section 81J of the Right to Information Act said that we cannot take any information that causes an unwarranted invasion of the privacy of any individual. So that means that we can't go and vicariously seek information on somebody's health or any such information. But it also said that you cannot have personal information if it has nothing to do with public activity or interest. That means that the law was very nuanced. If there was larger public interest, we could still get personal information. People were using this law to get a lot of information to demand accountability. For example, people under the Right to Information Act were asking for the names of capitalists whose loans are written off by public sector banks who hold our money. So they were asking for names. People were asking for names of beneficiaries of the public distribution system, of the pension system, of scholarships, because there's corruption that happens in all of these. And they were then holding the state accountable using all this information. Now, the Data Protection Act has amended Section 81J of the RTI Act to say that all personal information will be exempt. That means you and I, as citizens, will no longer be able to get any personal information under the RTI law. So that means we will not be able to know the names of all those capitalists who run away with public money, public sector bank money. They will say this is personal information. We will not give you their names. You know that in the recent elections, there's been a lot of concern about arbitrary addition and deletion of names.
Yes.
Now, the voter list has personal information. Personal information is our names, our addresses, our photographs. Now, this information is very crucial for us to fight electoral fraud, because till we know who is registered as a voter and who is not, we can't stop electoral fraud. So this information will very likely be now out of our reach, because we will be told personal information should not be given to people. So this is one big blow. The other thing which the data protection law does is that it makes everyone who collects personal information a data fiduciary. So, for example, journalists like you collect a lot of information. There is, fact finding that is done, surveys that are done, campaigns, organizations, movements constantly collect data to be able to help people realize their rights. Now, yes, of course, they also are big companies that collect data. But what the law does is that it puts everyone at the same level and says that all of you, whether it is an individual journalist, a researcher, a small campaign or group, or a large company like Geo, everybody is a data fiduciary. And it says that you cannot collect personal data, you cannot process personal data till you have consent from the person whose data it is. Now, this is really, really problematic, because the law goes on to say that if anybody violates any provision of the data protection law, their complaint will go to the Data Protection Board. Now, this board is a completely Sarkari, government controlled board. The government is going to appoint the members of the board and the chairperson of the board, remove them at their own will. There is absolutely no autonomy that this board will have. So this board will receive complaints against anyone who claims that their data has been personal data has been violated and the law has been violated, and the board has the ability to put a penalty up to 500 crore rupees. Now you can imagine that if a journalist is doing their work and someone goes and complains against them that you did not follow every provision of the data protection law, naturally nobody will give consent to use their data to expose their corruption. So now if any journalist exposes corruption, exposes wrongdoing, exposes human rights violations, a complaint could be made by that person or even by the government. And the Data Protection Board could impose a penalty up to 500 crore rupees on the journalist, on the researcher, or on any group. So you can imagine that this will cause such a chilling impact on free speech. This will cause such a huge problem on anyone who's using personal data. And the worst thing is actually that the government is saying that they will decide who is a data fiduciary and covered under the data protection law and who is not, who is exempt from many of the sections and provisions. So this is clearly showing the intention of the government. The government is not looking to protect personal data of people. See, the government will very clearly, very quickly be able to use this provision to say that the government and its instrumentalities are not covered under the law. So UIDAI and all of these bodies which hold our personal data like Aadhaar data and all biometrics, the government could say no, they are not covered. Similarly, their own cronies, their friends, the government could say they are not covered. So Geo or somebody else, the government could easily say no, they are not covered. But anyone who raises a voice against the government, who is critical of the government, will be covered. So basically, this is a weapon, and this is weaponization of personal data that we are seeing. It's not protection of personal data, it's weaponization in the hands of the central government.
So that means in the name of protecting personal data, they're actually trying to control everything. They're trying to control the press, control the media, and everything. Now, if I am to say that how this act comply with the spirit of the Constitution, with the preamble of the Constitution, with the fundamental rights of the individual. So how is going to affect it? Does it comply with the spirit of the Constitution?
That's a very important question, because I think that there will have to be many challenges to this kind of a law, even in the courts. And the constitutionality of this law will have to be very, very carefully examined by the judiciary, because the law has already been passed by the Parliament of India in 2023. So, if, like I said, this law does not protect the right to privacy. They have brought the law to say that we want to protect people's data, their privacy, but actually it does not protect people's right to privacy, because the largest repository of personal data is the central government itself. It is also very big companies who hold our data. Now, if these kind of companies, the government is saying that we will hold the power to exempt them, that means that our data is not going to be protected, our privacy is not going to be protected. This goes against the right to privacy, which the Supreme Court has held is a fundamental right of citizens. Like I also explained, this law amends the Right to Information Act, and therefore it violates right to information, which is a fundamental right of the citizens of India. The Supreme Court has said that it flows from Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution, and therefore I believe that this law will also be violative of people's right to information. The right to information law already balanced the right to privacy and the right to information. By bringing in the amendment that it does to the RTI law and says that no personal data will be available because all personal data is exempt now, it will also mean that our right to information is violated. Also, I think that it's Article 19, and apart from Article 19, it's Article 14, because this is a highly unequal law. If the government is going to reserve for itself the arbitrary power to decide who will and who will not be covered under the various provisions of this law, and without any serious principles being brought in, then this is also violative of the right to equality. Because how can a small NGO or a media house or a journalist be told that no, you are going to be covered, and some media houses and journalists who sing the praises of certain political leaders, etc., might be told you are exempt. So, this kind of thing will also violate the right to equality. So I think that there are many kinds of problems with the law, and most importantly, free speech and expression will be curbed, Article 19(1)(a), because journalists have not been given any exemption under this law. If across the world you see data protection laws, most of them have exemptions built in for journalists. Here, there is no journalistic exemption, which will mean that this will completely impact the free media. So I think that there will be many, many kinds of things that we can think that make this law unconstitutional.
Why I'm bringing in this issue of this constitutional spirit and constitutional right, because the preamble of the Constitution says that people can oppose, people can peacefully protest. So we have the right to peaceful protest. Now, if something is going wrong in some government department, or if something in some corporate houses, they are actually doing something wrong, and people are going to protest against them. But if you cannot take their names, if we cannot take their names because this Data Protection Act is there, then what is going to happen? How is it going to actually, Constitution, I have the right, if someone has done something wrong, then as a citizen, as a conscientious citizen, I have the right to protest against this. But if because of this law, I cannot take the name of the person, I cannot mention it, then how I am going to protest against this? Against whom I am going to protest?
The data protection law does not directly say that one cannot take names. What it does say is that if there is any personal data of any individual, then that data cannot be collected, it cannot be processed. So you are right that if there is evidence of corruption somewhere, we will find it impossible to collect that data to a very large extent. For example, I'll give you an example. In the electoral bonds case, when the Supreme Court said that people should have a right to know who was giving money to which political party. And when the information came out, it showed a lot of quid pro quo and corruption. Now, how did we all analyze the data? How did journalists and transparency activists analyze that data? We processed that data, because when the SBI put out the data, we then looked at it, it was available online. So we all did some analysis, some automated processes were run on it. And we said that, for example, one company, mega company, was given a huge contract after they gave electoral bonds to the BJP. Now, this kind of analysis, is only possible when somebody is able to process the data that is available. So first of all, data will not be easily available now. And second, even when data is available, we will find it impossible to process that data till we get permission and consent from the person who is allegedly doing a wrong thing. Now, that they will never give. So, you are right to the extent that how will we even get the information to be able to protest? And in that sense, how will we mention names? So even if people can see that there is something wrong, they will not be able to get the evidence, and even where the evidence is available, they will not be able to process it in any way, and therefore it's going to be a fundamental blow to our right to free speech and expression, which includes the right to protest. Because if I have the right to freely speak, the Supreme Court has said that I have to first have information. If I don't have information, how do I formulate my thought? How do I formulate my demand? And if I can't do that freely, then how can I do free speech or expression and protest? So yes, this is going to be very adversely impacting our democracy, because it will be impacting our ability to be able to hold those to account who are doing wrong things. I'll give you a very small example. All of us have heard of the kind of corruption that's happening even in mining or infrastructure projects. Recently in Bihar, you would remember, there were so many bridges that collapsed. There are so many mining contracts that are given out, which are totally arbitrary and wrong. Now, people ask for information on who the contractors are, what are their names, who are building these bridges. People ask for contracts of the mining contracts that are given out. People ask for information on who the government officials are who are giving out these contracts. Now, all of this information will be potentially out of our reach, because the government will say, oh, this is personal data. I can't give you the name of the contractor. I can't give you the name of the official who gave the contract. You know, there are so many deliberations that happen where people have asked for information on how a policy was changed to benefit some private company or capitalist. People ask who were the officials who were sitting in on those deliberations, on those meetings, who were changing the policy in the favor of these corrupt people. So that information now, the government will say, no, we cannot give you the names of our officials. So then how will we hold anybody accountable? And how will we hold any protest against those people also? So yes, I mean, the law does not say in those many words that you cannot name anybody, but effectively we will have no information to be able to even name the corrupt and those who are doing wrong things.
Now, two things. As I see it as a triangular. Triangular means the base is the Constitution of India, and then there are corners. Two corners you can see that. Then you see one is the Right to Information Act. Right to information. If something, you see, public money is involved or anything public is involved, so we have a right to get the information. That's one thing. And another thing is that the right to information is actually, it is a very important tool for the media. So now, if by bringing in this act, are they actually trying to kill the spirit of the Act, Right to Information Act, and at the same time, also the free press? That means freedom of expression. And these two things, Right to Information Act came, of course, in 2005, and freedom of expression is always there. And this is the basics, if I could say, that it's in the very pyramid of the Constitution. They are going to actually kill it. They're going to destroy it.
Absolutely. Like I said, this law goes against Article 19(1)(a), which guarantees us the right to free speech and expression. That article of the Constitution also guarantees us the right to information. And the Supreme Court has said that much. So by curbing our right to information, by the amendment that this law has brought, effectively, the right to access information for the citizens of India, the right to question that is given to the citizens of India is going to be very severely impaired. And a lot of the information, like I told you, that people have sought in the last 20 years of the RTI law has really been around personal information, which has been able to hold governments accountable. Now, this information will be out of our reach once this law becomes operational, which is going to happen very, very soon. The other thing, of course, is that, like I told you, a lot of the countries in the world, even where data protection laws exist, they give journalistic exemptions. Now, that's very important. As a journalist, how do you do fact finding? You get to know that there was a human rights violation. You go there. You will have to make a report. In your fact-finding report, you will have to write the name of the people who were killed or who were attacked. You will have to write the names of people who you found were attacking, who were the perpetrators. Now, all of this is personal information. If you have to now go and ask for consent, will any perpetrator, will any attacker ever give you a consent to write their names? So obviously, all sorts of fact-finding investigative journalism will go. Like I said, in things like the electoral bonds, in things like corruption exposed by the media, all of these things requires today some processing of personal data. So only when journalists have exemption from this law can they sit and say, okay, now this is the list I have in front of me on my computer, and I will run these operations and process this data, and then I will disseminate this data. All of this You need consent. Why would a corrupt person, why would somebody who's abusing the law give journalists that right? So that means that media freedom is over.
Overdone.
And the government is saying that we will decide who is covered and who's not covered under the law. Now, this is so dangerous. People who are covered under the law will have to pay up to 500 crore rupees. So, which journalist in this country today can pay 500 crore rupees? And the government will say to their crony media that, look, if you don't worry about anything, you are exempt. So, that means that anyone who exposes wrongdoing of the central government, anyone who raises their voice against the central government, any journalist, any media house will potentially now work under this fear, this chilling effect that if we publish anything without consent, then we will have to face 500 crore rupees of penalty. So media freedom is dead effectively. The investigative journalism will be dead. The only thing you will be able to do is to write what the government allows you to write.
And then government
only what the central government wants
allows
to propagate.
Right. Yeah.
So it's going to be propaganda. It's not going to be investigative journalism on news.
And any critiquing of the government is not allowed. And who has authorized the government? We, the citizens. In a democracy, citizens are actually they should get the most actually importance. So citizens are the prime. Now, who have given them the permission that they will decide on behalf of us, on behalf of the citizens of India? Who has given them this permission?
So the fact of the matter is that when we elect our representatives and we send them to Parliament, one of the functions that we ask them to do is to frame laws for us.
Yes.
But those laws must be constitutional. They must be within the four corners of the Constitution of India. That is the document that comes above everything else in our democracy, in our republic.
Yes, they should protect our rights, and they should actually
what has happened in this particular case is that the parliament, through the parliament, the government has pushed through a law. And at a time when there was a lot of furore about Manipur in the parliament, and the opposition had staged a walkout, that is when the data protection law got passed. So the data protection law did not have any kind of debate in parliament because the opposition had walked out. There was a no confidence motion on the issue of Manipur burning. So at that time, the government brought very quickly to the parliament this bill, the data protection bill, and the bill was passed without opposition MPs sitting there, and the bill became act. So now we all have to live with it and challenge it.
Yeah, I have two more questions, and then I will wind up the interview. The first, I would like to know from you what is the motive behind bringing this act? What is the motive of the government? Why did they bring this?
The only motive that I can think after reading this law is that the government wants to control personal data in the country. The government wants to decide who will hold and process personal data and who will not. This law is not protecting personal data of people. So if you read the law, it is very clear that this is not going to help us with the problems that we were facing of fraud, of data leak, of data being sold in any real way. What it's going to do is it is going to give control to the government to control any media, any group, any campaign that raises its voice against the government and its policies. It is also very dangerous for democracy because it will help the government, whoever is in power in the central government. Today it's the BJP, tomorrow it could be the Congress, day after it could be some other party. But whoever is in the ruling party and in power at the center will be able to also compromise that political opposition. I will tell you how. All political parties today have social media IT cells. Now, those people, all parties collect personal information. They have WhatsApp groups. We all know that we all get messages from political parties before elections. Now, the ruling party will say that the ruling party's IT cell is exempt. Potentially, it could say that. But the IT cell, the social media cell of all opposition parties could be kept under the law. And then anyone can go and file a complaint tomorrow and say that, the Congress party or the Samajwadi party, any opposition party, they have violated the provisions of this law, and the Data Protection Board will have the ability to impose 500, 1,000 crore rupee fine. So you can imagine if 10 people out of the list that an opposition party media cell has, if 10 people are made to go, we know that very often there is coercion. People are sent to file false complaints also. But, a lot of times the government can also file a complaint under this. Imagine if 10 complaints go to the Data Protection Board, the Data Protection Board can impose a penalty up to 500 crore in every case. So 5,000 crore rupees of penalty can be imposed. How will a political party survive? We are looking at the figures today on who has all the money. So this is going to completely cripple our democracy. And the intention of the government does not look like it is to protect our right to privacy or our right to information or to protect our data. It looks from the reading of this law, unless they change it now, that it is to curb media freedom. It is to clamp down on all dissent. It is to clamp down on political opposition.
Now I have this, actually I'm running out of time. Now I have only 3 minutes. Now in these 3 minutes, I would like to know from you that how the NGOs, the citizens group, civil societies should react to this draconian, actually this is very oppressive act.
So we have seen that the right to information law did not come to us because of the goodness of anybody. It was because there was a very strong movement, people's movement, which then finally compelled the UPA 1, when it came to power, to bring in this right to information law. Now, the attack on the right to information law through the Data Protection Act will also have to be fought against by citizens. Similarly, journalists are doing their job. A lot of them are compromised, but some still continue to do their honest job and bring the truth to people. They will also have to raise their voice. I think that in a democracy, the only way that people can protect their rights is by making sure that they stand up to injustice, they stand up to wrong things. And of course, approaching the courts, the judiciary, is also one way in which it will have to be done. So I think that definitely there will have to be a two-pronged approach that people of the country take to be able to protect their fundamental rights, and which are being violated through the data protection law. They will have to stand up to be heard. It is high time.
Yeah, two things. One is that we have to have a broad, actually, platform, and we have to fight against it. That's number one. And number two is that we have to take the legal course. So
Yes.
thank you very much.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, not many people know about this law. Awareness is very low. So
Yeah.
these kind of discussions will have to be done, and in media and all over, so that people get to know this is what is happening. It's a very
Awareness has-
technical law.
We have to create an awareness, a very robust awareness on this thing. So thank you very much for sparing time for Northeast now. Maybe we shall again come to you for a more nuanced and elaborate discussion on this. Thank you very much for sparing time for the Northeast now. It was
Thank
really
you. My
pleasure
pleasure.
speaking to you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.